Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Another semi-final preview, and it's going to be Ruud versus Khachanov for the US Open 2022 tournament. A clear 50-50 for me. A very, very hard one to call. Before we get into it, though, remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. Also, leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Thank you so much. First, I'm going to go through the head-to-head, which is pretty non-existent. So they have played each other once before, but not much to really go on. Then we'll talk about their US Open form, who they've played, how they're looking going into this, and then I'll try and break it down tactically. And the reason why I say try is because, as I said, not a lot to work on from what we've seen in the past between the two. However, I will try and visualize how it might play out and what you might end up seeing and might want to look out for as the match unfolds. So Khachanov and Ruud have only played each other once before. Ruud winning in 3 sets in Rome and on the clay, so it's not a very good indicator of how this match is going to go, honestly. He won 6-3, 3-6, 6-1. Then if we look at their US Open form, Ruud, we can start with him, beat Carl Edmund in the first round in straight sets, who's coming back from injury. Van Rijthoven, who has been in really good form, to be honest with you, since the start of the grass court season. So that was a decent win. I mean, he won in 4 sets. So it wasn't without its struggles. Then he beat Tommy Paul in 5 sets, which was a really tough match. I mean, I know the final set was a bagel, but before that, he won 7-6, 6-7, 7-6, 5-7, 6-love. So he loses one of the 2 tiebreakers that he'd won, and he's going home, and we're not seeing him in the final. And the US Open dynamic and field could look very different. Then he beat Mute in 4 sets in a very interesting match. Again, not coming through it as comfortably as he would have liked. And then against Berrettini, a very impressive performance. Yes, an under par Berrettini. I mean, he was 5-love down the first 20 minutes. He looked out of sorts in the first 2 sets. Ruud ran away with it. And then third set, Berrettini was actually leading 5-2, if I'm not mistaken, and had set points. Just couldn't convert, and Ruud somehow came back in that set to win it 7-6 in a tiebreaker, which was pretty stunning, honestly. But I think by that time, maybe, who knows, maybe Berrettini comes back to win it in 5 if he wins that set. But ifs and buts, as I say in tennis, there is 5 margins, and despite it being a straight set win, it wasn't as straightforward as maybe some might think. Third set should have been Berrettini's, and we should have seen at least 4 sets, but Ruud doing really, really well to fight back, and definitely a mental tick for him. Also, he probably played the best tennis I've seen him play on a hard court ever in the first 2 sets. So yes, Berrettini looked a bit out of sorts, but Ruud also contributed to that with some fantastic play from the back of the court, and just generally looking very, very good on these US Open hard courts. So that's Ruud's, I guess, route. And, I think a lot of people might have said, well, Ruud's not a massive surprise in semifinals. I think for me, he was, given he was in his quarter. But he's come through and is, kind of, I think he was ranked number 5, right? Number 5 so he's ranked number 7 in the world, but I think he was 5 in terms of seeding. So he's kind of just done better than expected, I guess, if you're basing it on seedings. And then for Khachanov, he had Kudla in the first round, won in 4 sets. Montero won in 4 sets. The one against Draper, 1 set all. And honestly, Draper won the first set. And then the second set, it was 1 set all. And the third set, Draper was 5-3 up or 5-2 up. And then from there, he injured his groin, I think. And then was 6-5 down, retired in the third set. That was disappointing. And again, what could have been, What could have been. Khachanov, Carreno Busta won in 5 sets. And then Khachanov, Kyrgios. I mean, first of all, the Carreno Busta win I thought was fantastic. I mean, he won in a very, very, very tight match. And I was impressed with how he was one return and also serving as well, because PCB is a very good returner. And the way that he was hitting his spots was fantastic. And obviously, then he came up against Kyrgios in the quarterfinals, which he went into a huge underdog. And again, like the Australian Open in 2020, I think it was, which was a 5-setter. Again, they played out a 5-setter, a very tight one as well. In the end, Khachanov winning 7-5, 4-6, 7-5, 6-7, 6-4. I mean, how tight are those sets? And like Kyrgios said, I mean, Khachanov served really well. He did. He hit 30 aces, only one less than Kyrgios, and 3 double faults compared to 5 for Kyrgios. First serve points won 77%. Second serve points was even more impressive at 64% for me. Breakpoint saves 7 out of 9. I mean, some incredible stats there. Winners on forced errors. I mean, he hit twice as many winners on forced errors, 63 to 31. So he has been playing some very, very good tennis recently, Karen Khachanov. And people might forget that actually last year he won the Olympic silver medalist in Tokyo. And look, I mean, you know, Olympics doesn't necessarily mean everything. We've seen Bencic win the gold medal on the women's side, and she hasn't gone on to win a slam yet. I mean, she still has time to, but hasn't maybe played as well as she would have liked after winning a very big tournament. But what I would say is that he's clearly someone who has the ability, that's shown it. He's never actually gone past the third round, if I'm not mistaken, at the US Open, which is pretty surprising. For Ruud, he's never been at this stage either. And he was seen until recently as a clay courter, as someone who was a clay court specialist, and any other surface, you know, the hard court he would be okay, but really, you know, he was only looking to win titles, or people thought he'd only be competitive in terms of winning titles on the clay, but that's not to be. He made the final in Miami, and his hard court game has drastically improved in the last 6 months. He's serving a lot better, hitting his spots, and on top of that, I think it's been good to see how his backhand as well improve. It's not just the backhand that, you know, is very floaty and defensive and deep into court, which, you know, he just hits defensively to try and stay in the rally. He's actually able to hit it a bit flatter with more purpose, with more drive through the court. Which is really good. So, yeah, that's good. And I don't know. It's one of these things that I look at and I just think, you know what? This could go either way. And we'll talk about it more from a stylistic point of view, because I've gone through, of course, the head-to-head and also their routes to this stage. And Khachanov is someone who, for me, anyway, is... I don't know, he's a bit of an enigma. I mean, people are looking at him and thinking his forehand technique is a little bit strange and maybe not going to be able to push him to like a top 10, top 5. That might be a stumbling block. His serve, I mean, people think he should be serving bigger, considering how someone of his size and weight and kind of ability. He still doesn't serve massive, but he serves big enough. And the biggest thing, I think, for me is the amount of spin and also the spots he hits, which has been really impressive in the last couple of matches. Ruud as well, like he's a lot shorter even than Khachanov. So he's not that physical, you know, imposing type figure. But his serve is very good. A shorter ball toss, but very quick arm action. He's hitting his spots better, which is good to see. And he's bulked it up a little bit as well in terms of pace, which is good. So then we need to look at it from the dynamic point of view, and how do both players handle the other's attributes. So let's talk about serve return, because you guys know I like talking about that first. So Casper Ruud, the biggest thing for me that actually impressed me against Berrettini was his willingness to actually stand a bit further up in court in the return position. I was expecting him to stand very far back on the return position on the first and second serve. Not only was he a bit further up on the second serve, on the first serve he was as well. I reckon he was about 2 meters behind the baseline. And I said, I think in my preview, if he stands 2 to 3 meters behind the baseline, you know, he might have to suck up a couple of aces or unreturnables, but the points that he actually gets a racket on it and is able to get it back into court, he will be on the front foot quicker. He's good enough to be able to step in and take it on the rise, because, you know, we say he's a very good clay courter. Yes, of course, it's going to have more pace on it, but, you know, at the end of the day, Casper Ruud is a very talented tennis player. And he's someone, to me, who is good enough to be able to shorten his swing, deflect it back deep, rush the opponent more, and then step in and try and get to neutral. So that is what he did against Berrettini, which was extremely impressive. And I expect him to do a similar thing, or try to at least do a similar thing against Khachanov, who has been serving as well as a Berrettini or a Kyrgios, who are top 5 servers on tour, in my opinion. Khachanov on his day can also serve like a top 5 player on tour in terms of serving. So Khachanov will try and hit his spots. He'll definitely try and target the backhand of Ruud. Berrettini made a mistake against Ruud, which was early doors. I think he just backed his serve and said, look, wherever I want to serve, it's going to be good enough, and I can hit aces on returnables because my serve is that good. And I think he maybe overrated his ability to be able to get 3 points against Ruud's forehand return. That didn't quite play as he would have liked, because of course the first 2 sets were a bit of a nightmare for him, got broken multiple times. Then he suddenly realized, okay, let's go into the backhand predominantly, and then I can vary it up into the body, into the forehand, but I'm not going to just kind of mix it up, equally. I'm going to go 33% into the forehand, 33% into the body, 33% into the backhand, and kind of like, whatever, whatever I'd like. So what I would say is that for me, anyway, Casper Ruud, he is going to have to hit more backhand returns. I think Khachanov would have seen the match against Berrettini. He also know that, look, Casper Ruud's backhand return is worse. And he's not the type of player, I don't think, to get carried away and say, you know what, I'm so good. My serve's incredible. It's elite. So wherever I want, no one's going to return it back. No. He will tactically look at it, use his tennis brain, which, to be honest with you, Berrettini normally would. Maybe Berrettini was just struggling to hit the serve to the backhand. It wasn't feeling as good as natural. Khachanov's been serving well. If he serves as well as he has been, it's going to be difficult to get an inroad. But Ruud, as I said, has been very good at stepping in and then getting onto the front foot straight away in the rallies. The other thing is that his backhand, because it's less of a liability, he's actually able to stick with most people on the backhand to backhand exchanges. Now, I do think against Berrettini, obviously, it looked better than it was, because Berrettini's backhand is not particularly good. It's probably worse than Ruud's. Khachanov's backhand is better than Ruud's. It is. So even though I'm saying it's fine for him to hang with Khachanov at times, I think, and he'll know this, and he'll be trying to open up on the forehand as early as possible, go into out. I don't think he is going to be able to go line early with the backhand. I just don't think it's as natural to him. So I think he might have to go into in or into out with the forehand and try and, make sure that Khachanov is being kept at bay with the forehand. In the forehand to forehand exchanges, I think Ruud will have a lot of success, especially with the angles he's been finding. Khachanov is going to clearly try and keep the points shorter. He doesn't want to get involved in very long rallies. Ruud will try and get on the front foot with the forehand and try and dictate from the back of the court, make Khachanov uncomfortable, reaching, having to defensively stay in the point. And I'm just having to look at, he came to net 30 times, Khachanov, against Kyrgios, which is, it's a fair amount, but it's not as much as I might have thought. That's 6 times every set, right? Which is not a huge amount. Against Busta, only 18 times. So he's not going to be looking to come to the net a lot. He's looking to actually dictate from the back of the court, which is interesting. But when I say dictate, I think his version of dictate is shortening those points, though. His shot tolerance has definitely looked better at the US Open, which is good. And he's got a very dangerous in-to-in forehand. The only issue with the in-to-in forehand against Ruud is that Ruud, of course, he can hit this whipping forehand cross court, and if it's not good enough into that forehand side of Ruud, Ruud will be able to transition from neutral to attack straight away, despite Khachanov trying to push him back into defense, right? Which might be an issue. So Khachanov needs to be on his game there, I think. And Ruud defensively on the forehand is pretty good. On the backhand side, he's not as good personally. So Khachanov might go into out with the forehand. He might try and go backhand cross and find the angles. But that's going to be an intriguing little battle at the back of the court to see who can wrestle momentum in those rallies, because I think it will ebb and flow for sure. I actually think Ruud, if I'm not mistaken, has been coming to the net more than Khachanov this tournament, which is an interesting one. I saw him serve volley a couple of times against Berrettini, which I thought was incredible. Yeah, he came to the net 23 times against Berrettini, and that was a straight set victory. So that's an average of we're talking. Well, okay. We're talking just over 7 times. So yeah, slightly more, which is interesting because you won't associate net play with Ruud, but what he's doing really well is when his forehand has been very, very good. So what he's been doing is saying, okay, if I get a short ball and I'm able to dictate with my forehand, I'm going to go into out or into in, or hit a good approach with my forehand and come in behind it. Like against Mute, 35 out of 44 points won at the net. 44 points he came to the net for. That's 11 points a set. That's extremely, extremely impressive to see his willingness to come forward. He's not a tallest player either, so he could get lobbed easier. But what he's doing is he's being selective when he comes in, and his volleying isn't incredible. But the thing is, your volleying doesn't need to be incredible if your approach shots are good enough and the way you've constructed the point is correct. When I say correct, it's efficient even. You've constructed the point in the right way, then you approach at the right time. The volley most likely is going to be an easy one because the opponent most likely will be on the stretch, will be in an uncomfortable position, and it should be a volley that you're able to easily hit, where you're not stretching, where it's not on your toes. So, Ruud has been utilizing that tactic very well, and I've liked seeing the variety in his game a bit more because I feel like it's something that he needs to add to his game, and he has. Also, both players, in terms of drop shots, actually, I'm trying to think. Ruud does drop shot a little bit. But what I would say is Khachanov, given that he's played back-to-back 5-setters, how much of an effect is that going to have on him physically? Because they were 2 really grueling matches as well. So I'm interested to see how he starts. I think he's going to start sluggish. And I think Ruud, maybe similar to how he was against Berrettini, he might get into a very quick lead against Berrettini, against Khachanov, even. I think he'll take the first set. Then from there, it's going to be a question of, is Khachanov able to kind of switch on and is his body kind of recharged, or is it a case of, actually, no, my body's done. Do you know what I mean? And actually, he's fatigued. He's looking slow and cumbersome. That will be a disappointment because he will then most likely get dismantled by Ruud. So it's a tough one to call. I think if both players are playing at their best, then it's 50-50 genuinely. I genuinely do think that. But given the fatigue factor, given that I think Ruud has played, I'd say Khachanov's probably played slightly better all tournament, given who he's beaten, how he served, etc. But I just have a feeling that Ruud might come out on top. And I'm going to go Ruud in 4 sets. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 5 sets. Wouldn't be surprised if Khachanov wins. But that's my thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts. Who do you think is going to win? Remember to hit the like button and subscribe if you're new. And also leave a rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Thank you so much. Stay safe and well. We'll